Welcome, thrill seekers, to a world of spine-chilling tales and hair-raising adventures. Gather around for a frightful journey into the unknown as we delve deep into the realm of scary stories. Buckle up, hold on tight, and get ready to experience a rush of terror like never before. Jane had always been fascinated by mirrors. As a child, she would spend hours in front of her mother's antique vanity, admiring her reflection and imagining all sorts of adventures. But as she grew older, something changed. The mirrors seemed to hold a dark energy, something that made her skin crawl and her heart race. It wasn't until she moved into her new apartment that Jane realized the true nature of mirrors. She had just finished unpacking and was admiring her new bedroom when she noticed something odd about the mirror above her dresser. It was as if her reflection was moving independently of her, almost as if it had a life of its own. Jane shook her head, thinking it was just a trick of the light. But as she turned away from the mirror, she could have sworn she saw her reflection smile. Over the next few days, Jane couldn't shake the feeling that the mirrors in her apartment were watching her. She would catch glimpses of movement in the corner of her eye, only to turn and see nothing. But she knew that something was there, something lurking just beyond her line of sight. One night, Jane woke up to use the bathroom. As she stumbled through the dark apartment, she caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. But this time, her reflection wasn't smiling. Instead, it was sneering at her, its eyes filled with malice. Jane tried to look away, but she was transfixed. The longer she looked at her reflection, the more she felt like she was losing control of her body. It was as if her reflection was taking over, forcing her to do things she didn't want to do. As the days went on, Jane became more and more afraid of the mirrors in her apartment. She avoided them as much as possible, covering them with sheets and blankets. But she knew that they were still there, waiting for her to let her guard down. One night, as she was preparing for bed, Jane caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. But this time, her reflection wasn't alone. Standing behind her was a dark figure, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Jane tried to scream, but no sound came out. She was paralyzed with fear, unable to move as the figure stepped closer and closer to her reflection. And then, without warning, it reached through the mirror and grabbed her by the throat. Jane felt a cold, clammy hand wrap around her neck, cutting off her air supply. She tried to fight back, but the figure was too strong. As her vision began to fade, she could see her reflection smiling, its eyes filled with a dark, twisted glee. When Jane woke up, she was lying on the bathroom floor. Her throat was sore, and she could barely breathe. But the mirrors were gone. All of them, as if they had never existed in the first place. For weeks, Jane tried to convince herself that it had all been a hallucination, a nightmare brought on by stress and anxiety. But deep down, she knew the truth. The mirrors were a portal to another world, a world filled with darkness and evil. And she had brought that darkness into her own home. From that night on, Jane became obsessed with finding out the truth about the mirrors and the dark figure that had attacked her. She spent countless hours researching and reading books on paranormal activity, hoping to find some answers. One day, she stumbled upon an old book in a dusty corner of a library. The cover was weathered and worn, and the title was written in an ancient language she couldn't decipher. But as she flipped through the pages, she felt a sense of familiarity, as if she had stumbled upon something she had been searching for her entire life. The book spoke of a cursed mirror, one that could open a doorway to a dark realm of evil spirits and malevolent entities. The mirror was said to have been created by a powerful sorcerer centuries ago, using dark magic to trap the souls of his enemies. Jane knew then that she had to find the mirror, to destroy it before it could cause any more harm. But where could she find it? And how would she destroy it? She spent weeks searching for clues, scouring old texts and consulting with experts in the field of paranormal activity. Finally, she found a lead. The mirror was said to be hidden in an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, a house that had been abandoned for decades. Jane gathered her courage and made her way to the abandoned house. As she walked up the overgrown path, she could feel the air growing thick with an unnatural energy. The house loomed before her, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in ivy and moss. Jane took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was musty and damp, and the floorboards creaked beneath her feet. She made her way through the rooms, her heart racing with fear and excitement. And then, she saw it. The cursed mirror, hidden away in a corner of the attic. It was even more beautiful and sinister than she had imagined, its ornate frame glittering in the dim light. But as she approached the mirror, she felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that the mirror was not to be trusted, that it held a dark and malevolent power that could consume her. Jane closed her eyes and took a deep breath, centering herself. She knew what she had to do. She raised her hand and brought it down on the mirror with all her strength, shattering it into a million pieces. As the last shard of glass fell to the ground, Jane felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The air felt lighter, the darkness that had hung over the house dissipated. But then, something strange began to happen. The shards of glass began to glow with an eerie light, swirling together to form a dark and twisted figure. It was the same figure that had attacked her in her own bathroom, the same figure that had haunted her dreams for weeks. Jane backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. But she knew that she couldn't run from this. She had to face it head-on, to banish it once and for all. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, channeling all the courage she could muster. And then, she opened her eyes and faced the demon within. The battle was fierce and intense, with the demon using every trick in the book to try to defeat Jane. But she was stronger than she ever knew, and she fought back with all her might. Finally, with a burst of energy, Jane banished the demon back to the dark realm from which it came. She collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. As she made her way out of the abandoned house, Jane knew that she had found a new purpose in life. She would dedicate herself to studying the paranormal, to helping others who had been affected by the same darkness that had consumed her. She knew that she had been given a second chance, and she would not waste it. Months passed, and Jane became a well-known paranormal investigator. She traveled the world, investigating haunted places and helping people to find answers to the unexplainable. And she never forgot about the lessons she had learned in that abandoned house on the hill. One day, as she was preparing to investigate a haunted hotel in the city, she received a call from her brother. He had just moved into a new house, and strange things had started happening. Jane knew that she couldn't let her brother go through the same ordeal she had faced. She packed her bags and made her way to his house, ready to confront whatever darkness was lurking within. As soon as she stepped inside, she felt the familiar chill run down her spine. There was a mirror in the hallway, one that seemed to hold the darkness within. Jane knew that this was the source of the problem. She approached the mirror, her heart pounding in her chest. But as she looked into the glass, she saw not a dark figure, but her own reflection staring back at her. She breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that the curse had been broken. But as she turned to leave, something caught her eye. There was a glint of light coming from the floorboards beneath the mirror. Jane knelt down and lifted the floorboards, revealing a small box hidden within. She opened the box, and inside she found a small, ancient mirror. It was the same mirror that had caused her so much pain and suffering, the same mirror that had been hidden away for so long. Jane knew then that the darkness was not gone, that it had simply been lying in wait, ready to strike at any moment. She knew that she had to destroy the mirror once and for all, to ensure that no one else would suffer as she had. With a deep breath, Jane raised the mirror above her head and brought it down with all her strength. The mirror shattered into a million pieces, and Jane felt the weight lift from her shoulders once again. As she left her brother's house, Jane knew that the darkness would always be there, lurking in the shadows. But she also knew that she had the strength to face it, to banish it once and for all. As the night draws to a close, we bid farewell to the terrors that haunted us and the spine-tingling tales that kept us on the edge of our seats. Remember, the darkness may linger, but the dawn always brings a new light. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never stop exploring the mysteries of the unknown.